this conversation is part of a series of video looking at the impact of COVID-19 on human rights and migration and other aspects of social justice and equality. So I'll start with you, Zdena. Can you quickly introduce yourself, please?
Okay, so I'm Zdena Middernacht. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Kent, and I'm also a consultant for NGOs with a main focus on research and primarily working for the non-profit sector. Yeah.
And Christina.
Hello, my name is Christina Johnsson, and I am associate professor at the Malmö University, and I'm doing research about human rights claims from organizations, and I've been doing human rights since beginning of the 93, I think, in Sweden and internationally.
So I wanted to have the two of you together because the QCEA's human rights program works on human rights and has a particular focus on migration, but it's part of the Quakers' ways of working, and we're looking at peace, justice, and equality. Then I think we're living in an interesting time with a pandemic that has all of us at home. And I wanted to have your thoughts on how do you think this will impact the work that we are doing for social change, for social justice. So, Christina, you are a lawyer by training and many more things. What, from your perspective and being not Brussels-based, how is the pandemic affecting the work you're doing, and what thoughts has this is bringing to you?
Well, it doesn't really affect the work I'm doing, other than that the university is shut down, and I have to do the teaching and the training of students digitally. But since I live in Sweden, I reflect a lot on the restrictions upon human rights, because here we're allowed to move freely because of restrictions, constitutional restrictions. The government is not allowed to restrict our rights. Whereas I know in many countries, in the neighboring countries, Denmark and all over Europe and the world, there are lots of restrictions. So I think that's one thing one has to look into later on, what is happening. And I think when I think about the program of the QCEA, I think about the situation of migrants in this COVID-19 virus, what is happening to people who have no access to healthcare. And I think about children in school who are not allowed to go to school, they're at home, what happens to violence towards children and their right to education. So I think there are lots of things we have to look into later on. And as we know, also violence against women, domestic violence is reported. So I think all these things we have to look into. We don't know the results yet. There are lots of things we're going to find out later.
Zdena, I think Christina just said that how, in effect, the pandemic hasn't changed much in her way of working, or the changes haven't been that monumental. Do you share the same experience that this is big, but this might be a glitch, or do you think it's a completely life-changing moment?
Well, I think it's a situation that also shows the differences, if anything, the inequalities between sectors and between people. So for someone like myself, for instance, I work as a consultant anyway, and the organization that I work for is anyway, online. We do a lot of work online, so that doesn't change much. But then I think we have to think of people who are, for example, self-employed and don't get any cover if they stay at home. We have to think of people who are in the front lines, for instance, retail workers who have to be at work because they have to earn a living, even if it's against their own will, even if it's with very little protection. And I think that's where the inequality comes out quite clearly in terms of which, you know, class, middle class. I find it to be a very I mean, I'm of a different view. I do think that the measures are necessary. I think that, you know, there are different ways of containing the virus, and I think this is one of them. So I think that's quite important. But I do think that it leads us to a path where we have to question our whole system and how everyone is included and who is excluded from that system in the case of a crisis like this.
And just to probe a little bit, do you think this is life-changing, that there will be a before and after, or is it we're being a little bit too caught up in the moment?
Well, I think, you know, unfortunately, I hope that it could be life-changing, because I think we've learned lessons, and I think they're lessons to reflect on in terms of what should stay and what should go. What I think would be unfortunate is if we get into a big hurry to go back to business as usual and just get back to where we were and continue the way we were. I think it should be life-changing. I think that systems need to be questioned. I think that things need to be done differently. I think that now we know that the planet can go and shut down. That's a real possibility. And I think taking those lessons will be important, and making it into something that's life-changing should be something that we do without rushing back to making it just one event and moving on into an unsustainable way of working.
Christina, do you, I guess I'll ask you the same question. It's we are right in the middle. The pandemic is still unfolding. How are you preparing for after? And if so, how?
I think what is challenging, among many other things in this time, is that we don't know. I think bearing that many things are unknown, and I think that is teaching everybody something. What I think, I saw somewhere, you know, all these kind of comic strips that are appearing now in these days. It said that solidarity, or the collective, is the new Jesus. And I think in a sense, regardless of inequalities and all these things, because I agree there are lots of things showing at the moment, but I think what I sense in this country is solidarity. Solidarity is coming in, and it's taking care of those people that really needs to be taken care of. That's why I stay at home in quarantine, because I feel solidarity with people in risk groups. And I feel that I can connect with people all over the world. It feels like we actually globally, and now I know there are people who are not connected, and I know there are people who are living in misery, really. But I think as an experience, it is the collective. I sense the global community in a way that I never did before. And I think that is going to change many things. And I think the climate, the pause for the climate, with people not in airplanes and less cars and less pollution, these things are gonna, it shows that it is possible to restrict the development. And I think that's something that it's not going to be taken away from us as an experience. So I believe there is an after.
Okay, thank you. And Zdena, do you have any kind of little nuggets to share about how you are keeping positive, resilient in those times where there are, I mean, we all untested. So how do you keep on going?
How do I keep on going? Well, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it's about looking at the long term. I mean, it wouldn't be it wouldn't be true to say I'm not anxious, and I'm not, also because I mean there's a lot of personal things that makes one anxious. You know, I'm currently expecting a baby in 5 weeks. I need to be in the hospital for that. I don't know how the situation there is going to be. I don't know how I'm going to stay safe. So it's really taking it one day at a time, and just mentally trying to, I suppose, like Christina says, also just try and reach out to the collective and be part of that, collective, and I think also believe that after this, you know, there will be enough room for reflection, there'll be enough room for storytelling, because I think there are a lot of stories that need to be told, and I think there is a lot of deconstruction of the structural elements that can be done through hearing people's stories, both those have been in the front lines, those that have been at risk, though, you know, those that have lost loved ones. We don't know how it's still going to evolve. So I think, I mean, at a broader level, that keeps me going, and then at a very personal level, it's really just taking it one step at a time. And also, like I say, it's an intersectional question, right? I have a safe home to live in. I have a garden. The sun is shining. It's enjoying those small things, but also keeping in mind that there are people who aren't that fortunate, and what can we do after this to also reflect on that.
Thanks. And Christina, the same to you, to wrap up. How do you keep on keeping on?
Well, I find support in the Quaker community in a way that I didn't do before, to be honest. I feel that I really need to sit down with friends to connect. Otherwise, I meditate, I do yoga, I try to keep... I have a young friend who's 21 who is since 1 month left in almost dying at the hospital, and because of COVID-19, and that comes into me sometimes, and then I really try to breathe through that fear that I feel and sorrow for his family. And I know lots of people experience this at the moment. So I think it's a mixture between being afraid, trying to breathe, trying to see the positive things in a mixture, and having friends.
Thank you very, very, very much. And in a way, this is the reason why you are part of QCEA's advisory group, because between the two of us, you've summed up what the program is trying to do, and it's about the collective and working together. It's about trying to keep that long-term perspective, because things might be hard now, but there will be a tomorrow, and together we can make that tomorrow better. And it's about storytelling, solidarity, and hopefully together we'll keep on working to achieve those. Thank you so much for your time, and stay well.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Kékéli.
Thank you. Hope to talk to you again soon.